Hello there. When I was starting in coffee, I really wish I had this video right here. I'm gonna try to do it justice, but I wanted someone to explain how to dial in espresso, and more specifically, they would taste a shot of espresso, tell me what the recipe is, you know, the dose, the yield, how long the time is that took to brew the shot. They would taste it and then tell me what it tastes like and what they would do differently, like what is the adjustment that they would make. And so that's what this video is. I'm gonna be pulling a coffee from Rwanda. It's a little bit lighter roasted, it's washed, Akinyaru. We roasted it here at Valor, right behind this door. And I'll just be dialing it in and telling you what I taste and then what adjustments I make and why. So Lyndon is gonna be my trainee. She doesn't need me to train her, but she's gonna act like she does. And we're gonna be tasting the espresso together, so buckle up.
Woo!
So as you can see, we're outside. This is our cart that we use for catering. And you may think, is it gonna be different because you're dialing in outside? And my answer to that would be like, yeah, maybe a little bit, but at the same time, many of you run coffee carts and you need to dial in outside. So I thought it'd be helpful. It's a beautiful day. Enjoy the ride. So let's just do a brief overview of espresso recipes, right, Lyndon? Sound good? We wanna start with the strength of the espresso, and then we'll move to the flavor of the espresso. So strength, the way that you set your strength for your espresso is by using a brew ratio. A brew ratio speaks to how many grams of ground coffee go in the portafilter, and then how much liquid espresso comes out when you're done brewing. So grams in, grams out. A 1-to-2 brew ratio would be, let's say, 19 grams in, so 19 grams of coffee in the portafilter, and then 38 grams out in liquid espresso, weight in grams. So that's the brew ratio. We start with strength. So I have no idea what this grinder is set to. I've actually never dialed in this coffee before on espresso. So we're just gonna start at a 1-to-2 ratio and get going. And I don't have a tamper. I want to make this video as raw as possible. So exactly what you see coming out of the grinder, that's what we're gonna film. We're not gonna edit any of it out. Yeah, we're in a shipping yard, so there's a truck that came up. Oh. Yikes. So first thing, I'll explain even that. I like to just prime the grinder a little bit, like get a consistent amount of coffee flowing out of it, because at first, when you first load up the grinder, it's pretty inconsistent. So I'm gonna start off, once again, with a 1-to-2 brew ratio. We might change that later, but we're gonna start there. I'm gonna tear out my portafilter, grind right into the center. 20.7 grams. I'm going for 19. And I probably wouldn't use my fingers when working in the cafe. We would have a spoon, okay? But we don't have a spoon out here. Redistribute the coffee. Tamp. This is not a master class on technique. This is a master class on dialing in. So I'm not explaining all this stuff, but we are gonna taste some espresso. So purge. Lock it in. And I'm going for a 38 gram output. So as you can see, it's kind of like barely coming out. I'm gonna let it ride though, and for science, we'll taste it. If I'm going for a 38 gram output, then that means I'll probably stop the shot when it reaches 35 grams. Because I know that more coffee is gonna come out even after I disengage the brew head. Okay. Yeah. Oops. Right on the money. All right. That was a 34-second shot. And now I'm gonna go get a spoon. And we're back with the longest spoon of all time. It's very important when you're dialing in espresso to stir it before you drink it for a few reasons. It's very important to stir your espresso before you drink it when you're dialing in for a few reasons. One is it makes it cooler in temperature, and hot coffee is hard to taste. So we want to bring down the temp. We also want to make sure it's all mixed together and has an equal strength all the way through. So once again, that was 34 seconds, 19 grams in, 38 grams out. Let's taste it. Lyndon, do you want to give that a taste?
I'm dying to. Here, get me. Woo! I'm tasting a little bit of sour, a little bit of bitter, pretty acidic.
Yeah, so that shot, this coffee is a pretty high acidity coffee, and it's a little bit more of a challenge to dial in, I will say that. But that coffee pulled in 34 seconds, which tells me that that's a little bit past the window of the yummy zone, if you will. And that tells me that it's over extracted, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We are just talking about strength, okay? And then we talk about flavor. So, but as for this strength, it feels like a good body. Would you agree, Lyndon?
I would agree.
Yeah, it's got like a really creamy, sort of milky body to it. So we're gonna lock in that side of things for now. The 19 grams in, 38 grams out. We'll lock that in, and then we'll move on to flavor now. So if I'm assessing that for flavor, yeah, the finish is super bitter. When I swallow the drink, the espresso, it's this like ashy, smoky, bitter finish. And so that tells me that it is over extracted. Usually these smoky, bitter flavors that you get on the finish tell you it's over extracted, whereas the sour, salty, sort of like underripe fruit type flavors you get on the front end of the sip, those are under extracted flavors. So now what do we do? If it's over extracted, it took 34 seconds, we're gonna make the grinder coarser, which is going to decrease the contact time between the water and the coffee, and hopefully will bring down that time closer to, I'm gonna say maybe 26 seconds, 27, 28, and then we'll taste again from there. So I'll go ahead and make this a little bit coarser. And what we wanna do is purge 3 times. Just because sometimes there can be coffee from the previous grind setting stuck in there. Some people purge less than that, some people purge more, but we're going with 3. So let's try again. One important thing while we're dialing in espresso is you only ever want to change one variable at a time. There's a bunch of different variables you can change. You can change how much coffee goes into the portafilter. You can change how much liquid espresso comes out. You can change the temperature of the machine. You could change the grind setting. And so we only want to change one, because if you change more than one, then you won't know which one of those variables contributed to that change. So just change one at a time. So let's try again. $21 grams. So again, we need to keep that at 19, the same as our first time. Yeah, so already we're getting coffee coming out of the spouts way faster. And a good analogy I like to use for a grind setting is if you think about if you have a bucket of marbles and a bucket of sand and you poured water over both of those, which one do you think it would take longer for the water to pass through? Probably the sand, right? Because the particles are way smaller. There's more surface area exposed. Particles are more closely packed together, so it's harder for the water to pass through. So that was 38 grams again. That took 21 seconds to brew. So the first one was 34 seconds and over extracted, tasted kind of bitter. That one was 21 seconds. Let's taste this. Very different. Very different. Lyndon, you want to get in there?
Woo! Yeah.
Yeah. On the front end, it's very zingy, really slaps you in the face. Which one do I look at? Yeah, so that one, 21 seconds. It has a lot more zing and pop on the front end as soon as you take the sip. That first shot we pulled at 34 seconds was a lot more dead on the front end. Like you took the sip and it just kind of didn't taste like much, and then you swallow it and then it's like, okay, yeah, that's really bitter. The second one, like I said, a lot more zingy on the front end. And then the finish just sort of is non-existent. It's like a little bit salty, a little bit sour. And so basically what I think we need to do is just split the difference between these two shots. One of the things that I talk about when we're talking about dialing in is you've got macro adjustments and micro adjustments. So a macro adjustment in this case, where you're making a big adjustment to dialing in, is your grind setting. When you change the grind setting, it should make a pretty significant change in how that coffee tastes and how long the coffee pulls. So that's a macro adjustment. Whereas a micro adjustment is when you get it pretty close, but then you're just fine tuning the end result. And my favorite micro adjustment to make is changing the yield. The yield is how much coffee comes out. So you might take plus or minus 3 grams there. So we'll get to that later in a second, but let's just pull another shot. I'm gonna make the grinder a little bit finer. We wanna be careful with changing the grinder too much. Because one, it just takes a lot of time and you don't have a lot of time to dial in. And also, the more you change the grinder, I just feel like the more unstable it gets. So we made it finer. Let's purge 3 times. Same thing again. We're gonna keep everything the same except for the one variable that we're changing. I don't know if you guys knew this, but I actually am wearing pants. I know it looks like I'm not wearing pants, but I am. You may not be able to see them, but I am, so. I think this is the one gonna get us closer. All right, 25 seconds. So just think about the journey we've been on so far. The first shot pulled in 34 seconds. We deemed it over extracted. The second, and then we made it coarser, the grinder coarser. The second shot pulled in 21 seconds. We thought that was a little sour, a little salty, too shocking on the front end. We need to pull more extraction out of it. So then we made the grinder finer, a little bit finer, again, split the difference. And now we're at 25 seconds. So let's see what we got. It's definitely like right in the middle of the first two, but I think I wanna, I almost liked the fruity pop of that second shot, even though it was under extracted. Here's what I'm gonna do. I talked earlier about the macro adjustment of changing the grind setting, right? The micro adjustment being changing the yield or how much liquid espresso comes out, weighed in grams. I'm actually gonna pull 2 more shots, but the first shot is gonna be -3 grams of yield. So instead of 38 grams, which is a 1-to-2 brew ratio, which is what we've been doing, I'm gonna make a 35 gram shot, and then I'm gonna make a 41, 42 gram shot and kind of stretch it. So I'll restrict it a little bit and I'll stretch it a little bit, and then I'll see which one I like better. And then I'm thinking if all goes how I think it will, then one of those will be what we go for. Let's jump into it. So this first shot, I'm gonna pull to, like I said, 35 grams. Just gonna let that sit there for a second. And then I'm gonna pull this second one. Same exact grind setting, same parameters, except for, like I said, I'll pull it to 41 or 42 grams out. We'll go ahead and taste this one with the shorter yield. Yeah, there's that fruity zing that's back. It's back, baby. And here is the 42 gram output. One side note with dialing in, you wanna make sure to have some water with you so you clear your palate a little bit. I don't have any today because I don't, but. So I'm gonna go with 19 grams in, 33 grams out. Took about 24 seconds. I think making that micro adjustment by subtracting 3 grams of yield is really what made that coffee have sweetness and acidity together. I like having a balance of those two things. There's a fruity pop on the front. The finish is clean. And so I would consider this coffee dialed in now. All we're trying to do with dialing in is just make the coffee taste like it does on the cupping table. Whenever we're just tasting the coffee in its most rare, or not rare, but pure form in cupping, we just want the espresso to taste like that. So having cupped this coffee a good bit, I would say that that is the most accurate representation of this coffee. And if I was to work an event right now, I would just keep my eye on how long these shots take throughout the day and just make sure that we're staying close to that 24, maybe plus or minus 2 seconds, just to make sure we're on the right track. So hopefully this is helpful to you, and thanks for joining.